George Satari. How you doing, George?
Welcome, George.
I didn't know I was the voice from beyond, but okay.
Well, you're a voice.
Yeah, I'm a voice. Not a good one, but I'm a voice.
You're a voice. I can't get you. You call in, so it's kind of that mysterious shadow voice, and that's good. That's good. That's it. All right, we got to get things rocking and rolling here. First of all, we're going to talk about the Somalian pipeline that is going from Somalia over to Columbus. Okay, so we want to talk about that. Second thing is a little bit later we're going to talk about property taxes. Really dive into that pretty extensively with the whole property tax. I want to remind everybody that this is coming up. This is coming up Monday, January 26th. We've got three guys there, Brian Massey, John Pleshnick, and Chris Galloway. So that's abolishing property taxes, and we want people out there. So please, if you're watching this at all and you hear about it, get out there on Monday the 26th. It's going to be a great time. And one of the things we're going to do, guys, is we're going to start off the show a little bit differently with the panel discussions. We're going to hit with some really key questions right off the bat that you guys are going to have to answer, like how are we going to fund everything? Okay, that's going to be like the first question. I'm just giving you a heads up, okay? How do we fund everything? And we'll just rip that apart so that everybody understands it, and then we will go on with the people's question, so to speak. All right, tonight I want to talk about the Somalian invasion. And it is something else. I got this. Watch this off of Glenn Beck for a minute. And somebody needs to just turn down their radio or whatever they're listening to. Something's got to be shut down a little bit. But here we go. Let's watch this off Glenn Beck.
We've got to really dig into who's funding this. So we started looking into Riot Inc. It's the same people funding the Get Out the Vote and the ballot harvesting and all of that. And then just because of why is there this distinct anti-ICE flavor to these protests, and why does it have the same investors in the migration and the election and the riot? And it seems pretty obvious. And the final piece, I believe, is this what Nick Shirley exposed in Minnesota with these these empty daycare centers is. It's obvious. It's right in our face. The left, they bribe new voters with welfare. They try to create a new dependent class. They're hoping that they'll vote blue for the rest of their lives. And so by bringing in more people, that's that biggest slice, or the blue slice, bringing more people, the orange slice there, the biggest part of the pie, more than half, is the election. And so it's this pipeline from the border to the ballot box. And how they can believe that these new migrants are going to vote blue is they just bribe them with welfare. I mean, millions and billions of dollars of welfare with zero oversight, zero accountability. And so it's really insidious. I mean, this is a whole subversion, wrapped into one. And these people need, these funders really, they know what they're doing, obviously.
Oh,
I mean, you just
genius.
had this guy, this attorney general talking about how they were meeting every single day looking how to thwart Donald Trump. And I think the major thing they're concerned about is him disrupting this border to ballot box pipeline.
So the border to ballot pipeline. And we see that with the Somalian invasion, okay? We see that. And that's what I want to talk about here is you hear what he was saying there. This was on Glenn Beck yesterday. I was watching the show and I was saying, I got to tape that. That's really good stuff. But this invasion, think about it now with Somalians, okay, who are a different type of people. They really are, because they are very hostile, very edgy. They're willing to fight at the drop of a hat, okay? Also, when they come into this country, they don't become part of the culture. What they do is they don't learn the English language. They get on the welfare, they stay on the welfare, and it's documented they've been on the welfare for 10 years, and they have no intentions of getting off. But the one thing the Somalians will do is they will vote as a bloc, okay, as a democratic bloc, all right? So think about that a minute, because I was thinking about that. We have the second largest Somalian population in the entire country in Columbus. So if you got 40,000, 50,000 Somalians there, and you're giving them all this welfare, you're giving them the SNAP, you're giving them this transportation ability to make money transporting other Somalians. You're giving, and then in return, and not only that, but all those phony daycare centers that are set up as well. But in return, they will vote Democrat. They will support, and that's why, think about all this, guys, that is why the mayor of Columbus, Ginther, went ballistic with the whole idea that there's any kind of fraud with the Somalians going on in Columbus. He went crazy. And the other thing that is driving me nuts is these YouTubers are being called gaslighters. So the YouTubers that have been going in Columbus to videotape these daycare centers, that the doors are locked and nobody's opened that door in months, okay? But they're still getting a lot of money. Now you got DeWine, you have Phil Plummer. They're coming out and they're saying that this is all gaslighting, that there is no real major fraud in Ohio, and basically telling the YouTubers, don't go anywhere near these daycare centers and start recording, okay? Stay away from them. The whole thing really stinks of corruption to me, because we see what's happening in Minnesota, and Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, what is the one thing he's telling everybody, especially at the beginning? Oh, there's nothing to see here, right? Nothing to see here. Go along with your business. There is plenty to see there. The corruption is off the charts in Minnesota. And I got a feeling here in Ohio, we're just touching the tip of the iceberg. And it is up to journalists. It is up to YouTubers. It is up to all of us to investigate this stuff, because the government isn't. And I want to play this one clip here, and I'll get some of you guys' thoughts on that.
This is a citizen journalist. These are all just allegations. There's no proof. You went from allegations to proof in just a matter of a couple of weeks, trying to say that you are gaslighting people. How do you respond to those folks?
Yeah, it was interesting talking to that reporter because what she pointed out was that I said correctly, that citizen journalists brought forth allegations of fraud. That is absolutely true. It remains accurate. Those allegations were then taken up by DCY and investigated. And then individuals had to reimburse the state of Ohio for money they were overpaid for fraudulently claiming kids were in attendance. That's proven fraud. It's not the investigative journalists that are proving fraud. It's the agency that proved fraud. And they even admitted it at the end of that clip that not all of the $2 million was fraud. Some of it was administrative. Well, what I asked in return was, the daycare centers that were proven to commit fraud, did you refer them to the auditor's office for investigation and then to the prosecutor for prosecution? And the administrator's answer was no. Internally, we made a determination that we didn't think they could be prosecuted.
All right. So I don't know if you guys are following that or not, but what they're saying, those investigative journalists uncovered 4 daycare centers. The fraud was in excess of $2 million. The Department of Children and Youth said that, I guess they also may have bounced it off of DeWine. I don't know. But they said internally, we're not going to prosecute. We're not going to pass it on to the auditor, who could do a more in-depth investigation, then pass it on to the Attorney General and maybe prosecute some of these people. We don't want to do anything like that. So that's what Josh Williams was talking about right there. That's what he's bringing up. So when you have our state government, they don't want to investigate, they don't want to prosecute. These fraud charges are only happening because of these YouTubers looking into stuff. They're not. That's about as crazy as it gets. Let me go around the table a little bit here. And if somebody is like, real quick here, I keep hearing feedback. So if somebody's got a loud audio, turn it off. But go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, does the Attorney General, do they have to have something referred to them, or if they hear something that's going on, can they go out and just investigate on their own, or do they have to have somebody knocking on their door saying, "Gee, I think there's a problem in Columbus"? You have to blame the Republican Party. They're all Republicans down there.
Well, the State House is all Republicans. Yeah,
it's all Republicans. So we're saying, let's just keep voting more Republicans in. It just
well, if
blows
it's
my
any
mind.
Consolation, if you vote the Democrats in, it'll be worse. Believe it or not.
So we're just going, over the cliffs slower with the Republicans because they're not doing their job. They are not protecting the interest and the property of the citizens of Ohio. Period.
No,
and they all should be removed.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think, Jonathan? What's your thoughts on that, man?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say again, because every time I get opportunity to make the following statement, I avail myself of it. Those aren't Republicans. If we want Republicans in Ohio Republican Party, I'm air quoting that, we're going to have to work at it. We're going to have to work to kick out the Rhino non-Republicans. And we know, I mean, it's open secret. Everybody talks about it. We ended up with a system that's a uniparty. And we ended up with that because the far left invaded the Republican Party. We all know that. So what I say is let's roll up our sleeves, use precinct strategy, which is just a fancy term that's been attached to basic American civics, to get real patriotic America First conservatives into the Republican Party. As soon as we have voting majority, all this nonsense disappears. It's like magic. It basically is just like magic. We're going to use civics to reclaim the Republican Party. We're going to wedge it out of the claws of the far left, ultra-liberal Democrat Party. It should no longer be an extension. That's my comment to Brian's comment. Anyone who knows who Don Lemon is, it would be interested to know that guy, he had his 15 minutes of fame and then some years of just being this nonsense peddler on TV. In case you missed it, at some point, I think it was today, he just happened to be in some church in Minneapolis, and a whole bunch of people came in because they heard that ICE was coming in. I know this is tangential to the Somalis, but the ICE is brought into Minnesota, into Minneapolis, because of this issue and because of that release from Nick Shirley. So we've got ICE coming in, and that knucklehead, Don Lemon, he happens to be in this church and happens to stream a whole bunch of people that went in and just went crazy inside this church on a Sunday because they heard that the pastor of the church was somehow aligned or affiliated with ICE, which brings me to a core, key, fundamental topic it's fundamental to what we're discussing here, and that's the lack of press and media. Anybody who thinks that Don Lemon or any of those knuckleheads were ever actually journalists is only fooling themselves. If we could get back to the point where we could trust our news sources and journalists, then maybe they would tackle these kinds of issues. But in the meantime, we only have people like Nick Shirley. So I'm thankful personally that he did it, and I think a lot more of us should be doing those sorts of things, investigating what's happening, open up a camera, start the app, do it responsibly, do it legally, but get yourself out there and start investigating, because we clearly have some branches of law enforcement that are turning a blind eye or maybe in on some bad deals. We have journalists and news media who are turning a blind eye or actually blowing smoke and providing cover for these illicit acts. So it comes down to us and we the people in both regards. Be citizen journalists, investigate, share, get the information out, and also find precinctstrategy.com or ohioprecinctstrategy.org.
You know, John, I'm going to go to John here also. So what do you think, John? What do you think about this whole situation also with the Somalian pipeline and the daycare center and stuff like that?
Joe, the Somalian scandal in Minnesota and in Columbus, Ohio, isn't just the tip of the iceberg in terms of daycare fraud, job and family services fraud. It's the tip of a much bigger iceberg of waste, fraud, and abuse that stretches from the federal to the state to the local governments. And everyone knows that there is no such thing as a government that doesn't have fat to cut. And from the taxpayer's perspective, do you really care whether it's outright fraud or it's just brazen wastefulness? Maybe we're a little bit angrier when someone is deliberately stealing the money, but when we're spending $1 million on a barber chair or all the nonsense we've heard out of the different layers of government, sometimes there's a debate: is it criminal or is it just criminal stupidity? But this is just a little example of the waste, fraud, and abuse in government, which is exactly why when taxpayers say we're overtaxed, we can't afford to pay anymore, and government comes back and says there's no way, it's impossible, forget cutting services that people actually care about. We could cut non-existent daycares. We could cut waste, fraud, and abuse, and we would have billions and billions of extra dollars to spend in Ohio. We would have trillions of dollars to spend in the United States. There is so much low-hanging fruit to pick, Joe. This is just a powerful example, and we need to use this example to get people angry and motivated to go for the big nut. To go for the enormous amount of real corruption, waste, fraud, and abuse that we have at every level of government. President Trump is trying to do it, and man, they're fighting him on it because there's a lot of people making their livings, and it's not just Somalian fraudsters in Minneapolis. It is way bigger than that, and it spans all of government.
Yeah, it's not. I got you. It's not just Somalians, but the Somalians are in the news right now, and when you get to Minnesota, it's like 90% or 99% of all these daycare centers with the Somalians, they have traced to fraud. Okay, and they even said it's part of their culture to do this kind of stuff. So it's kind of like, what's going on here? But the bigger thing too, guys, is how are they setting up the daycares? Somebody is doing it for them. The fraud is so obvious that it's deliberate. And it's got to be one of these voting blocks where, yeah, you got 50,000 Somalians who will vote Democrat in Columbus. We got to keep that voting block there. You can't win then if you are a Republican for a judgeship, a lawmaker, anything. You can win if you were a dog catcher. When they have a voting block that size in Columbus, you're not going to be able to do anything. Let me go over to George. Hey, George, the voice from beyond.
Well, you could probably get elected dog catcher because, oh no, I'm sorry, those are the Haitians that eat the dogs. Never mind. Oh, they eat the cats.
That's
okay,
right,
so,
the Haitians. Yep.
So, yeah, I think the bigger scandal. I preach on this and screech about this all the time. The bigger scandal is not even the waste, fraud, and abuse. The biggest problem in my book is how our Constitution has become so malleable that everything's a federal function. Daycare, food stamps, housing. Are we still a constitutional republic, or are we just a socialist, higher socialist version of Finland or Sweden or Russia? It's ridiculous. I mean, the government has its nose and finger in everything. And as I mentioned this previous, the federal government has everything's become federal. Whether you started things that are natural functions like defense and some administration, you get into medical. Medical is totally dominated by the government. Education is totally dominated by the government.
That's right.
Roads and construction totally dominated by the government. So is anything not governmental anymore? Why don't we just say, get rid of the states and have the federal government administer all the money for all the programs, food, housing, lodging, daycare, diapers, and then, the whole republic has teetered and gone down the drain because the people are so used to Uncle Sugar doing everything and anything for everybody, whether it's again medical and on and on and on. So it's I think that's the bigger philosophical scandal that we need to identify.
And when we talk about the sugar daddy, it's of course it's our money. It's our tax dollars that are going to fund all
paying
this
ourselves.
welfare.
We're spending ourselves into our own slavery. Forget about Bitcoin and electronic currency and all this. We're funding ourselves into slavery. I mean, the American people, long as they got their football games and their porn and their beer, they don't even seem to give a thing about any of this.
That's all they need. That's all.
Yeah, I would agree with George on that because I've been asking: is our 250-year experiment, is it over? And
That's
it sure
teetering.
sounds
It's
like to me.
teetering.
I'm agreeing with George 100% on that.
That's teetering.
Well, Brian, Ronald Reagan famously said, and he is so right, that we are never more than one generation away from losing freedom. And we stand now at the precipice, in no small part because of decades and decades of excessive spending with a 30 plus trillion-dollar debt that just keeps getting bigger and faster and bigger. It is frightening, but there's nowhere to run. There's not another United States. If we lose this fight, there's no round two. And so, as difficult as it may be, we have to draw the line in the sand right here, right now, and say we want to take it from 250 to 300. We're not going to stop at the semi-quincentennial. We are going to make it for another generation and another generation forward, but we're not going to do it easily, because there are definitely forces at work here that are not accidental. It's not just laziness and folks moving like automatons. This is a plan to destroy the United States from the inside out. This is a plan for the socialists and the communists who know that if they can dumb down people with bad education, take away civics, get us focused on nonsense and hedonism, then yes, eventually everyone will become a taker rather than a producer. The country collapses in on itself, and suddenly, we're all building pyramids while people are whipping us. It is a sad future, but it's one that is not unintentional. Our enemies want the United States gone because we are the rebellion of the people, of we the people, against tyranny, against dictatorship, against the oligarchy and the super wealthy. The reality is the United States is a fundamental threat to every dictator and every tyrant in the world because their people see the United States and say, I deserve better for myself. They start to think about Thomas Jefferson and revolution and a better life for their family. We don't even have to invade another country to threaten them. Our freedom is a threat because it demonstrates that there is a better life than one under tyranny.
There is no other country. That is, this is the only country we got, man. And there is no other country out there like this country.
Yeah, nobody's going to come to our rescue. But here's a question that I have, and that is, there seems to be clear indication that at least some of the money that is alleged to flow through these Somali groups out of the country, because there's a connected piece having to do with the airports, and there are flight logs that appear to show huge suitcases full of cash on top of whatever actually gets wired out of the country and sent electronically. But if huge amounts of money are leaving the United States and going to Somalia, and I have every belief that there is, if some of that is going to terror groups, then at what point are the elected officials culpable? If we have people in Columbus, Ohio, for instance, who are elected politicians, and let's set aside for a moment the likely fact that they probably benefit from the Somali community by votes and money and kickbacks and stuff. Just setting that aside for a moment, what if money is flowing out of the United States and we the taxpayers, through fraud, are actually funding terrorism? That seems to me quite likely. And that's something that I'm very anxious to hear a lot more about. I know that Jack Windsor was actually one of very few true actual journalists in the state of Ohio. Jack Windsor was in Columbus investigating over the past few weeks. He's released a series of articles that is your cue, listening audience. Go find Jack Windsor and follow him. I'm hopeful that he and people like him actually do the investigative journalism and figure out if that's the case. I would love to see some accountability on the part of our elected officials if that proves to be the case.
I'm going to play this. I'm going to see if I have audio for it because I just put it together here. I just grabbed this now. Let me see if I got audio for it.
Yeah, there we go. There it is.
Yeah, but I got to see. Oops. Let me do this here.
Yeah, hit the little audio insignia at the bottom. Just make sure that's maxed out. It is. Yeah, you may not be sharing. No, now it's muted.
Yeah. Yeah, it's too low, though. You can't hear it.
Yep. We're not getting audio.
Anyhow,
but people can get from the headline.
That is the story about all this money flying out of Columbus.
Yeah.
And going over to Minnesota. They traced $136 million of it in 1 year of cash. $136 million in cash going from Columbus to Minneapolis.
That's just what they recorded.
The Somalian connection there, okay? It seems like there's a Somalian connection there. But remember, there is no fraud. We have tight oversight. DeWine is telling us we have tight oversight. And, we watched that video there with Josh Williams, who's running for Congress out there in Toledo. He wants to put, actual security cameras inside of daycare centers so that you can count how many people are there, okay? And this footage wouldn't get out to the public or anything like that. It would just be so that you could monitor that there are actual kids at these facilities, because we've seen the Somalians. These buildings are boarded up. There's no snow tire tracks. No one's been in these buildings for months, and they're getting millions of dollars.
According to public records, Blue Star Academy, LLC, that is open in Columbus, Ohio, was cited for conditions no parent would ever accept. Certainly wouldn't. Children had access to a knife, extension cords, matches, a lighter, large heavy furniture not secured to walls, traffic, a body of water, power tools, nails poking out of furniture. Staff were not physically supervising children. Let that sink in. According to inspection reports, staff used baby monitors and walkie-talkies instead of being in the room. Staff used mirrors to watch.
What do you think of that? They had some kids, and they didn't even go in the same room that the kids were in. They just put up a mirror so they could occasionally glance at the mirror and see what the kids were doing.
So Joe,
other rooms, staff used video cameras instead of direct supervision. I've seen daycares with no children present during licensed hours. I've been told paperwork can be backdated by daycare owners. I've read inspection reports describing feces, urine, blood, bodily fluid on floors, sheets, cribs. I mean, think about that. Reports are saying there's no attendance records, not enough cribs, sheets being reused without being cleaned, open outlets, unsafe and hazardous equipment, play equipment protruding with rusted nails. Why are these centers still open? Because the system is not designed to shut out bad actors. It's designed to keep providers open.
That's the whole idea there, John. Got to keep those daycare centers open no matter what.
Joe, it just reveals what a scam the state government has become, because we pay so much money for quote-unquote oversight. And yet we can see there is no oversight. I mean, fundamentally, aside from the state legislature that votes to pass the laws and the Supreme Court that hears appeals from our local courts, what is state government? It is layer after layer of oversight. In theory, state government is there to make sure that local government does its job well. Gotta tell you, I'm not seeing the oversight. I'm not feeling the return on our investment. And once again, this Somali daycare issue highlights a problem, but it's not the whole problem. The problem is that our entire government is incompetent. The problem is that we are rife with waste, fraud, and abuse, and we're spending billions of dollars for a state government to provide oversight that's obviously non-existent. And whether it's straight up corruption or incompetence, It's millions and billions of dollars being wasted either way. So when I hear folks say we need more and more taxes, I say, it's time to cut our losses. We should be cutting taxes drastically. No one in their right mind would spend their own money for this kind of service. No one. So why are we giving our tax dollars to it? It's insane.
Well, now as I keep harping and saying, because DeWine and Phil Plummer and others in the legislature have been coming along and saying, well, there's nothing to see here. And they said that all these YouTubers like Mahek Cook and others and Jack Windsor, and there's been a slew of them that have gone to these daycare centers recently. They're all gaslighting the situation. There's nothing to see here. Now, who agrees with them? And this is a red flag, the Plain Dealer. Plain Dealer, Chris Quinn, who does a podcast show, he's come out and said that, I'm so glad that they said it's all bogus and they called it gaslighting, because that's what it is. Now, of course, he's referring to the Republicans like DeWine and others who have come out and said that. So he loves DeWine. Okay, he loves them. He said the MAGA fringe seem to want a scandal to exist rather than celebrating Ohio's security. Top-notch oversight and security that we have. It's a joke. It's a joke that's not funny. It's a joke that's not funny.
Yeah, just remember, Joe, that the governor's office believes this waste, fraud, and abuse is really just a cost of doing business. That's coming out of the governor's office. Not acceptable. The other question I have, if there are children in there and they're being treated that way, where are the parents? Why aren't the parents... I remember if we had a kid going to daycare, we were inspecting that daycare facility to make sure that it was something I want to put my child in.
Brian,
according
to there's some indication that some of these Somali families are just sort of flipping kids. So if there's one family that has 8 kids, another family, sister-in-law and brother, they might have a daycare center, and all they're doing is watching those 8 kids that are their nieces and nephews.
Oh, yeah.
There's some indication
so it'd be in their
happening.
home. So they'd flip kids in their own homes, and they would charge the government for it.
Right. Charge the government
that's a
however
great
many
step.
thousands of dollars a day for watching your nieces and nephews. There's some indication that may be happening as well. I crossed that threshold a long time ago where I'm going to give some leniency to some of these supposed journalists, whoever that Quinn character is from the Cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer. It's really unfortunate because I grew up in printing in Cleveland, and we were very close with a lot of the people at the Plain Dealer decades ago. And I liked them. We used to do a lot of stuff together. My respect for them is completely gone. And now they're basically not much more than a scene magazine, which, if you're not from the Cleveland area, is just this tabloid production that's just sensationalism and lacks journalism in my estimation. But so my plan in the future, or actually I'm already doing it, when we find the flaws in these sorts of statements made by people like Chris Quinn, go back and put it in their face, put it out on social media and say, this didn't age well. Remember Chris Quinn, or whatever his name is? Remember when you said that there wasn't fraud in these daycare centers? Well, let's take a look now. Why were you gaslighting your public? It's to that point now I believe we need to be holding their feet to the fire and calling out these supposed journalists who oftentimes appear to be doing nothing more than gaslighting and smoke screening the public and hiding fraud.
That's all they're doing.
We are going to show all of them the door out. And we are going to make sure that these people pay for what they have done to us.
Ilhan Omar, and what she's referring to there is ICE, and that they're going to pay the price for what they have done to her people. What they have done to her people.
Following the law?
Yeah. So, George, you still with
So,
us?
Joe, there is an interesting ICE update for Ohio. I'm not sure
Okay.
if you saw the headlines. There's an interesting ICE update for Ohio. Donald Trump's deputy director for ICE, so the number two at ICE, is actually moving back to Ohio to run against Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur.
I read that. And I have to look into that a little more closely. You're right.
John, if I could correct that, she's moving back to Ohio to run in the Republican primary against Josh Williams and Derek Marin for the nomination. So, yes,
That's true. That's right.
So.
Josh Williams is definitely throwing his hat in for that
Well, yeah,
congressional
he's thrown a long
seat.
time ago, and obviously she has the Trump endorsement. But it's
Well, that's unfortunate. I like Josh Williams.
I thought
Yeah, I
Josh
like
should do a
Josh.
great job. Yeah, I really do.
I like Josh, and I like Derek Marin too. But
Yeah.
there is a way to beat the Trump endorsement. Last year, Kevin Coughlin ran against someone in the 13th district Republican primary in 2024, and the opponent had endorsements from, I believe, J.D. Vance, President Trump, and not certain Bernie Moreno, but J.D. Vance and President Trump. And Kevin Coughlin, do you know who he got an endorsement from that beat those two endorsements? Any idea who that endorsement was from?
So now, wait a minute. Are you talking about a Republican or a Democrat?
I'm talking about a Republican. Kevin Coughlin was running in the 13th district Republican primary, and his opponent in the Republican primary had the endorsement of J.D. Vance and President Trump. He still won the primary because he had another endorsement. The question, Joe, is whose endorsement was that, George?
Okay, George, whose endorsement
Monday
was that?
Night Roundtable. No, just kidding. It was actually Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan's endorsement
Wow.
is more powerful in the state of Ohio than President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance.
So for District 13, but 13 is Amelia Sykes' district, isn't it?
That was still the Republican primary. It doesn't matter. I'm just
Oh.
referring to the Republican primary.
I got you. Okay.
So my only point is, if somebody gets possibly Jim Jordan's district, which is a lot closer to the 9th district than the 13th anyhow, but again, it's still the Republican primary, they should shoot for an endorsement by Jim Jordan because it seemed like his endorsement is more powerful in the state of Ohio than President Trump and J.D. Vance. Because I'll be honest, I really don't like President Trump's endorsements because this woman's moving back and she hasn't been in Ohio a long time. I know her family business has been there a long time. But a lot of President Trump's endorsements in my book are questionable in the sense that, oh, this person worked for me, or this is a great guy, he got my endorsement. A lot of times I don't know how he does his endorsements, but I think he should be a little bit more circumspect and a little bit more
Because if he was
diligent.
to support Josh Williams, let's just say, theoretically, Josh would win.
No, but President Trump is endorsing this person from ICE, the second in ICE command. I'm sorry, ICE or Border Patrol or whatever she is. He's already endorsed this new lady that just jumped into the primary.
Does she live? She lives in Ohio. I mean, she has to live in Ohio.
Yes,
So
but she doesn't have to live in the district. But she does. She's moving back because her family farm, where she grew up, is in the district.
Crazy. Yeah,
but you know, she hasn't been in Ohio for the last 10 years, and granted, she grew up here, and obviously a lot of people leave Ohio for greener pastures and bigger and better things. But like I said, look at the fiasco that President Trump created in Pennsylvania when he endorsed Dr. Oz and some other things. There's some people that he endorses that, in my book, I don't know if this is a good political word, but in my book, they suck. So I don't know if that's a good political term, but
yeah, I think it's chaotic here. I don't like it in this instance either. I mean, clearly we've had Josh Williams has been fighting for a long time now, making a great name for himself, connecting, getting to know people. He knows the political landscape in Ohio. And for Trump, and I'm going to guess that Trump didn't even look at Josh Williams. I may be wrong on that. I don't have any inside knowledge, but
I could also give you the inside scoop on why President Trump did not endorse Josh Williams or Derek Marin. The reason is
what's the inside scoop?
Derek Marin is considered, he lost against Marcy Kaptur before, even though the Libertarian, I think, took like 9% or something. So he's considered, quote, a loser. And Josh Williams, in his vetting, has a very thick dossier on himself in his youth of a lot of indiscretions, both as to verbal and physical indiscretions in his youth. So,
wow. Okay. Well, that's interesting, because something I had heard too was along the same lines with Derek. They were really upset with Derek because he lost by less than a point, and he was well funded from what I understand. So there was the
Libertarian took about 9 points from him.
The Libertarian
was funded by the Democrats to siphon off, the malcontents.
Okay, so maybe that's what happened. But I'll tell you what, you never get a second chance, guys. When it comes to politics and they got to put big money out, when you lose, they really don't want you anymore. I mean, you become a has-been, okay? And maybe they feel, so Derek is not going to be chosen, so now let's look at Josh Williams. He's a little risky. Who knows? All right, so we're going to bring in this other woman. we got to investigate her and find out more on her. But she was second in command of ICE. We're going to bring her in. We're going to support her. I'm talking Trump here. We're going to bring her into Ohio. We're going to support her, and we're going to get her to crush Marcy Kaptur.
Whatever her name is, maybe she has a role in Columbus, Ohio. Put her in Franklin County. That seems like where she's most needed in Ohio.
Get the Somalians out of there first, and then we have.
You got Haitians, you got Somalians.
All we need, huh?
You got Haitians, you got Somalians. What the heck's happening in Franklin County? It seems to be they flipped in what America last some time ago. So maybe this woman with her ICE experience and connections, maybe she's needed in Columbus.
Well, she's needed. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Guys. We're going to probably go into the property taxes here.
But no kids inside, millions paid out. Doors shut tight, Nick Shirley walks in, brings it all to light. Where the children at? Millions spent, but classrooms bare. Where the children at? Tell me, Mr. Governor, who's accountable for that?
All right, so we're going to switch gears here and talk about the property taxes. A lot to talk about. And also, we will talk. George, I'm going to ask you a question. But first, everybody's got to get to this event coming up Monday, January 26th. Got to get there. Auburn Career Center. It starts at 6:30. So please, this is imperative that you're there. Secondly, I got a few announcements here. Secondly, if you're in the chat, let us know you're out there, okay? So please, chat something. Let us know you're out there. And we want to bring you into the conversation, okay? Third, did you want to say anything, George, about Gary Coleman?
Yes, I do. He's having an event, and the flyer I sent you had January 21st, 2025. It's actually January 21st, 2026. Let me pull up the new flyer and make sure I got the right date. It's Wednesday, January 21st, 2026 at the Firestone VFW Post 3383 on beautiful Waterloo Road in beautiful Akron, Ohio. Doors open at 6. Program starts at 6:30. Gary Coleman will be announcing that he's running in the primary to eventually be the nominee against Amelia Sykes, who's a terrible, terrible representative. There isn't anyone that she doesn't associate with who doesn't hate America, including Ilhan Omar, Sandy Cortez, and the woman from Texas. They all basically hate America and they'll do anything to bash it. So she's an anti-American, do nothing congresswoman who doesn't even live in the district.
So Gary Coleman is going to run, and he's going to make his announcement on Wednesday.
Yes.
It's Kerry.
Oh, is it Kerry?
Kerry Coleman.
Kerry Coleman. So he used to be a weatherman, right? Wasn't he the weatherman, Channel 19 or something?
So 1943, and then he was filling for, I think, Channel 3. And then he's been a talk show host on WNIR 100.1 FM for the last 3 years. And his last show is Tuesday because he'll be making that announcement formally on Wednesday. And after that, he can't stay on the air because it would violate FCC requirements and all that.
And we will live stream that too, by the way. So we're going to be live streaming it, and then after we live stream it, we'll be chopping it up, throwing it out on Facebook, and highly promoting it because, we got to get rid of Amelia Sykes. Got to get rid of her in that district. And it's not a horrible district. It's only +3 Democrat, which isn't horrible.
Right. Plus, we have some strategies that we've been mulling through. We have Jonathan on our team as well. Now, Joe, I'm going to send you this flyer. If maybe you could put it up on the screen. There, let me just send this to you now. Let's see.
Are you emailing it or texting it?
I'm emailing it to you. Yes, to your regular email address.
Yeah, I'll try to put that up here in a few minutes.
All right, so let me send that.
Kent, do you have any announcements, Kent?
Yeah, just make sure everybody to if you are on Rumble to send if you can. There have been sent a couple gifts throughout the month. We appreciate that. If you want to send a Rumble rant, that would be appreciated. Also, over on Facebook, you can also send stars. That's another way of supporting us. It does take money to do this. You can also go to ohiopoliticalnews.com/shop and get all the mugs and merchandise over there. And also there is a donation button up at the top of the website to support us. It does take money to do this, so we appreciate any support. And yeah, we'll be live streaming. If there's things going on, let us know. We'll try to get as many places as we can to live stream. And it does cost money. So if there's any sponsors that would like to be part of these live streams and to be notified or noticed on the flyers or other situations please let us know, and we can talk to you about sponsorships and all that. So thanks for that.
And like this big, beautiful flyer that we have up there right now about abolishing property taxes at the Auburn Career Center. Could you imagine, just imagine now, a sponsor's name plastered on that as we send it out through Facebook and through Rumble and YouTube and, get it out there. So maybe even if you're a politician and you want to get your name plastered out there, we don't care. As long as your name isn't Amelia Sykes. Okay, we're not going to go that far. But, yeah, if you want to sponsor us in any way, please do that. Jonathan, you had a comment, I know. Go ahead.
I do, actually, too. You may recall that Jeff Skinner from the Ohio Register has been a guest on this program. On the 15th, just a few days ago, he released an article pertaining to that panel discussion. Go find the Ohio Register, Citizens Free Press release, property tax town hall, and he does a good job of writing up that panel discussion that's taking place at Auburn Career Center. The other thing, This coming Tuesday at 9:30 a.m., if you are in or near Geauga County, please come to the county administration building on Ravenwood Drive. If you are online only or interested in following along with what's happening here, I'm going to just quickly give a sum up. The county commissioners are meeting at 9:30 a.m. to vote on something that's really important. They almost voted last week on last week's meeting on Tuesday, but a procedural issue meant that they had to bump it to this week. Here's what this looks like. If you're online only, the county commissioners meetings have a YouTube channel. I'm going to try to get a link and put it on Voice of Geauga and my social media. We want to try and get as many eyes on this vote as possible. But here's what the whole thing looks like. If you follow, I'm going to put it in a context I think anybody can absorb. We know that the United Nations is trying to use climate as an excuse to kind of override our U.S. government and insert themselves in choices that we make and our autonomy. In a very similar fashion, there's an organization based out of Cleveland called NOACA, which it has a long name, Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Agency. NOACA has some control over 5 counties in Northeast Ohio: Lake, Geauga, Medina, Lorain, and Cuyahoga County. In theory, us outside ring counties have a vote in NOACA. NOACA really fundamentally can override our vote. And what it boils down to on Tuesday morning at 9:30 is further diluting the ability we might have of fighting back in any way, shape, or form. Some of us don't want that. We want our counties and our local government accountable to us, not waiting and answerable to some bureaucratic entity in downtown Cleveland. It's 9:30 a.m. Tuesday morning at Ravenwood Drive. As soon as I find the YouTube link, I'll be sharing that out on social media as well.
All right, fantastic. We do have another guest with us here tonight. John Mara is with us. How you doing, John?
There we go. Now I'm unmuted. Doing well, thank you, guys.
All right, very good. So we're going to be talking property taxes here. And I've got you, and I've got Brian, and I got Pleshnik, and we got everybody here. But all right, a couple of things I want to start this off with. I caught this. It says Rocky River. Okay, so first thing I want to start off is when we're talking property taxes, 50% goes to the schools through our local property taxes. This is statewide on average. 50%, then 40% is given to the schools through the state, and another 10% through the federal government. But some cities give above 50%, and some give less than 50% when it comes to property taxes. So Rocky River, which is out here in Northeast Ohio, 81% of the revenue comes from property taxes for Rocky River. 81%. Those people got to be fit to be tied. Now, the superintendent of Rocky River was saying, how are we going to make up $41 million in revenue if they abolish our property taxes? Because apparently there's a movement out there to abolish property taxes. Also, here's something else that happened. Last week, the Willoughby East Lake City School District in Lake County took action to put a 1.5% earned income tax on the May ballot, to replace 4 levies supported by property taxes. Now, you guys were there. I know that you were there, John. And I know that John Pleshnik was there. And I think Brian was there, too. I think all you guys were there. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we even live streamed it.
We were there. Yes, it was live streamed.
And you were there, and we live streamed it and everything. Now, here's a couple comments from some people I have never heard of. This character, Lake County Commissioner John Pleshnik, who's a Cleveland State law professor who studies taxes and public policy, said the earned income tax is a mistake. Pleshnik believes residents will move out of the area. So we'll find out for sure if Pleshnik really means that. And then also, Brian, you were in this article. Brian Massey, retired CPA and business owner who lives in Lake County, and cutting state and local government spending he says that'll put more money in the hands of people to spend locally and to boost the local economies. And that the state constitution requires the legislature to fund public schools. Massey argues the legislature has shirked that duty. All right. Well,
Yeah, I stand by that, yes.
I believe that. So let's get a discussion going here for a minute. I want to start off, and I don't care who raises their hand to go for the answer, but the main question that people have is, you abolish property taxes, how do we pay for it? How do we generate the revenue to pay for, let's just say, the schools? Who wants to tackle that question?
Joe, let me jump in here because I'm going to provide the simplest and the best answer to that question. How do we afford to cut property taxes? 2 words: cut spending. The reality is the people of Ohio are not saying, government, tax me a different way, a new way. I want new and more tax. That is not what the taxpayers of Ohio are saying. They're saying we're tapped out, we're overtaxed, we're overburdened, we want our taxes cut. And while property taxes are particularly problematic because they can result in folks becoming homeless, no one is clamoring to raise some other tax. That's a boogeyman. No one is clamoring to cut essential services like roads, police, or fire. That's a boogeyman. That's a straw man argument too. The truth of the matter is the people of Ohio are saying loud and clear, we want government to cut spending. We can talk about the waste, fraud, and abuse with Somali daycares. We can talk about the incredible amount of waste in public schools where you've got a principal for every grade, where you're spending tens of millions of dollars toto. You're spending, in some cases, $36,000, $18,500, remarkably large amounts per student, when 10 grand should be more than enough. More than enough. We can point out all these individual instances of waste, and yet the response we consistently get from government is it is impossible. We are cut to the bone. We're thin. We're starving. There's no way we could save any money. The only answer is to raise more taxes. That is the lazy answer. It is the wrong answer. And the only answer that Ohio will accept is to cut spending.
Gotcha. I agree.
I'll piggyback on that.
Hang on. Okay, you want to piggyback? Go ahead. Now I'm going to come back to John Morrow. Go ahead.
Sorry, John. I didn't mean to cut you off and step on your toes there. $22,312. That's the number. That's Rocky River, according to the most recent stated budget to the Ohio Department of Education. $22,312. Keep in mind, that's not actually the total. That's part of the total. So round up, you're at about $25,000 per student per year. And I'm with John. Then there's all this outrage about this voucher program, which is an avenue to, according to statistics and numbers and facts and reason and logic, and you get your kids out of these government-run schools, the results are better. It's pretty much across the board. And if you're doing it on a voucher program, that what is it, $7,500 or something? So let's just use that as a figure. Or assume that parents are putting in another $2,500, so $10,000. There's the John Plechnik figure. $10,000 is doing it better. It's getting kids actually educated. In Rocky River, spending $22,312 per student is an outrage. So anybody who's out there, let's just take a vote. Go out to Rocky River. So let's send a petition out, or not a petition, but the people get people to vote in Rocky River. Would you rather spend $10,000 per student actually educating them, or $25,000-ish, not really actually doing a good job of preparing and educating children? I have a feeling you're going to get a statistical 100% answer. Stop the waste, fraud, and abuse. That's the answer.
You got it. We got to do that. John, there was a meeting we just mentioned the Wickliffe East Lake school board meeting, and they wanted to put a 1.5% tax increase. And I know you were at that meeting. Give us your thoughts on that.
Okay, first of all, they didn't want to put a 1.5. They wanted to put a 2.5 on. And what they did was this. They basically put a resolution together that said that they needed to raise $46 million. And what they did was they they left it open. They didn't put an amount down, the percentage down. But then what they did, they said that they needed the commissioner of the state to check the formula to see what would be needed as far as collecting that amount. And whatever they can't collect through the earned income tax, they'll then have to collect on the property tax. Now, this is supposed to replace the emergency levies. Now, the emergency levies, the problem is that, as you know, that's on our property taxes, on our tax bills. 30% of it is paid by commercial businesses. So what they're going to do is, instead of those basically what they're going to do is they're going to give these commercial businesses a tax break on their bill, and put that all on the wage earner with the earned income tax. And they're saying this, well, we're giving the seniors a tax break. But yeah, you're giving the seniors a tax break. But first of all, it's just crumbs, because they're still under the 20 mil floor. They're still going to be getting that increase without the vote of the people. They still have the operating levies that they're going to have that for the general fund that we're going to have to pick up. So all those are there. What they're trying to do now is a bait and switch. And this is one of the things what they're saying is, well, how are we going to fund the schools, and how else can we get money from the taxpayers? But, it's very simple. There's foregone revenue that we're not getting. I was doing some research, and we go to Policy Matters Ohio. It's really interesting. Loopholes and other tax breaks cost Ohio $12 billion a year. Now, $12 billion a year. I mean, this is just Policy Matters. This one little Google search. So I think we need $13 billion to totally fund the schools dollar for dollar. So again, where are we going to get the money? We can do Doge. We can cut spending. But you know what? If we get this foregone, if we can collect this foregone revenue, pretty much with these loopholes and tax breaks, just pretty much, you know what, guys? They expire. I know they wanted to bring in businesses, which was great. They did with all these tax breaks and cuts, but sales over now. It's like now it's time that we need to collect this money. If we did that, we can fund the schools dollar for dollar, and they can keep their budget and their money. And again, the schools should be looking for more other loopholes and tax breaks that our legislators are giving, and collect that money instead of trying to go back at the homeowner. And now they want to take it out of the working man's paycheck. I mean, this is ridiculous what they want to do.
All right, so let me
got Wycliffe numbers also.
Man, Joe,
let me wait 1 second.
Yeah.
I wanted to clarify something. I'll come right back to you, John. I'll come back to John Pleshnick here in just a second. I just want to clarify something. When you're talking loopholes, and you're saying that there's $13 billion out there that we could grab, can you give us an idea of what these loopholes are?
Policy Matters here. It's a lot of it is there are tax breaks and benefits for business and economic development. A lot of it are, like I said, the sales tax. There's the state will forego an estimated $16.4 billion in these tax breaks in fiscal year 2026 and 2027. It's pretty much public sector, nonprofits, tax breaks by size. There's
so a lot of tax breaks, property tax, and what other, mostly property
tax
breaks?
There's prescription drug and selected medical supplies, building construction materials, and certain used structures. There's personnel, spousal, and dependent exemptions. There's TPP used in agriculture, Social Security and railroad retirement benefits, sales of TPP services, transportations, personal. It goes on and on. There's a whole list. If you go to policymattersohio.org, policymattersohio.org, pretty much it lists right there all the shortchangings in Ohio.
All right, so we got a politician here. Of course, John, the other John is mayor, but we have now a county commissioner. All right. There's a lot of loopholes out there, I guess.
So Joe, with respect to the loopholes and the point that Mayor Mara is making very powerfully here, is that we are very happy to give enormous tax breaks and abatements to large corporations that just so happen to make large donations to PACs, that just so happen to play in all the state races. It's interesting how that works. First Energy is the infamous example, but they're certainly not the only one who's been coming to the state and asking for money from the coffers. And if you were to close all those loopholes, John's absolutely right. We're talking about billions and billions of dollars in foregone revenue. And since those businesses aren't paying, guess who's stuck with the bill? You and me, as ordinary taxpayers that can't put millions of dollars into political campaigns. Now, I think it's important to really highlight the second mistake that's being made here, the mistake on top of the mistake. The first mistake is they raised our property taxes sky high. The people are revolting, and frankly, Ohio is dying. We are shrinking relative to our sister states because we're a high tax jurisdiction, and people are leaving places like California, New York, and Ohio to go to low tax jurisdictions like Tennessee, Florida, and Texas, which are booming. So we see that on a state level, but it's important to understand that it's even easier to move from one municipality to another. So you don't make a bad situation worse by compounding the mistake by raising taxes locally. And that's exactly what you're seeing in the Willoughby East Lake Public School District and other school districts that are now trying to raise their earned income tax. They say, well, if you don't want to pay property taxes, instead of raising property taxes, we'll raise your income taxes. That doesn't work. Number one, people are tapped out no matter what kind of tax you call it. But number two, if you raise any tax rate, I don't care if it's income tax, property tax, sales tax, if you raise any tax rate way above the competition, taxpayers vote with their feet and they leave. And as hard as it is to go from one state to another, it is not hard. It is not that difficult to move from one city to one village to one township to another. You might move 5 minutes down the road, you save thousands of dollars. That is not a difficult thing to do, and people will vote with their feet. We saw this happen in Euclid when they raised their local taxes, including an earned income tax for their school district sky high. We saw the population migrate out of Euclid and go east. And if Willoughby East Lake were to be successful, and certainly patriots, those of us who care about our homes in Willoughby, East Lake, Willowick, Timberlake, and all the great communities in the district, we're going to do our best to stop this. But if it were to happen, and we were to add a 1.5% income tax to the 2% that we're already paying in most of those communities, so you're paying nearly twice as much tax as any other jurisdiction, and compare that to the 0% rate they're paying out in the townships, I hate to tell you, but people are going to vote with their feet and leave. This is what we call the classic tax death spiral. It's a negative feedback loop. You raise taxes, people leave. That leaves less folks to pay the taxes, which means you're taking in less revenue, so you raise taxes again, and even more people leave, which means you're not raising enough revenue, so you raise taxes again. Do I really need to tell you how the story ends? It's called the death spiral for a reason. It ends in death, financial collapse. It destroys the community. And it's sad that people who are supposedly educators don't know tax policy or Econ 101. It's sad. How can you teach our children if you don't understand these basic ideas, these very basic concepts? Cause has effect. You can't simply raise a tax and pretend there'll be no impact on taxpayer behavior. That's just naive.
All right, I got you there. One other thing I just want to say off of that, though, is I can't believe that they're raising the earned income tax, or at least trying to. And that was news to me about Euclid. I did not know they did that in Euclid. To me, this is diabolical, man. When you start getting that earned income tax, that local tax, 3-4%, that's diabolical in my book. But go ahead, John.
It's the process what they did. What happened at the Willoughby East Lake School, there were 2 tax-related resolutions, both of extraordinary consequence, were added to the agenda at the last minute. Reportedly, the night before the day of the meeting, residents, we didn't have an opportunity to review them, understand, or respond. And then during the meeting, the board discussed one path, pivoted, voted unanimously on another, the way to handle it. So what they did was they had the resolution like I was saying earlier, it was at 2.5% to raise 46 million. Then what they did, they took that off. They added 2 resolutions the night before, and those 2 resolutions, one was for 2.25% increase, and the other one was for a 1.5 earned income tax. So they had the 2, and then whatever that would cover, whatever that would, now the 2.25 was supposed to generate 42 million, and the other 2.5 was supposed to generate, or the 1.5, 23 million. So, and the rest was supposed to be taken care of through the emergency levy that was already in place. So pretty much it wasn't replacing all of it, part of it, and then the part it did replace, like I said, they were giving tax breaks to the commercial businesses and putting all that tax burden on the working family. So what they did then, the first one, they said that, well, it's 2.25. One made a motion, 1 second, and they brought into discussion. During discussion, they were talking about, well, it's a little too much. We couldn't put that much on. We're getting pushed back, this, that. So then one of the board members says, well, I can't vote for this. So pretty much what they did was they tabled it. Then they brought up the next resolution. They read it, and that was at 1.5. And of course, it was an either or, so they passed it unanimously. So this is like the trickery that they pull on it. And then they're saying, well, this is just going to get it on the ballot, so we'll let the voters decide. And of course, they pushed it through, railroaded it through. They had 2 special meetings close by, basically because they wanted to get on the May ballot. They need one more meeting now to get it onto that ballot, so that once they get it from the state, from the commissioner of the state, once they get that verified number, then they can put it on the ballot in May. And they know when they put it on the May ballot, they have a better chance, obviously, of tricking people into voting for it, because they'll have 20% say voter turnout, which means they only need 11% of the voters to pass it. And of course, they'll have everyone that they know to try to support. Of course, the seniors and the business owners now too, because they're all going to be getting tax breaks. So, it's diabolical, like you said, what they're doing. It really is. And to go with, Rep. Thomas, I mean, he's doing a great job with trying to get all these crumbs, put together. But he asked me about this earned income, what I thought. And I says, if it's either or, I go, no. I go, it's a bad idea. I says, why? The state should be paying for it, and the state should be collecting to get through. Basically, we had a 9% state income tax at one point, and that was mainly for the higher wage earners. It wasn't for the lower wage earners. And, they chiseled it down to 2.75. So there's a lot of the money right there, all those tax breaks and credits that are ongoing and continual. So
go over to you, Brian, for a second, because you were at that meeting also. But, man, a 3-4% earned income tax, I can't even imagine that, because there's no deductions on that. It's just, whatever's the highest number on your W-2 or whatever, you're paying, 3-4% of that to the local government there, if your city. That's outrageous.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that I see at the state level the issue of income tax versus property tax, and you've got Vivek Ramaswamy saying absolutely he's going to eliminate the income tax, so statewide. I'm just wondering if that puts an even heavier burden on the local authorities to collect additional income tax. So I'm agreeing with both John Marr and John Plechnik. It's just not sustainable. And I think one of the things that they should be absolutely doing is they got to cut the size of government, as John Plechnik says. And one way to do that is without property taxes, you're not going to have to have as many people working in the government, state and local. That payroll is going to be cut down, and you're not going to have to pay millions upon millions of dollars to third-party appraisers. I don't see the government being in the role of property valuations. That's not a role of government. The property tax system is far too complex, and is ripe for manipulation by those in authority. Citizens don't understand it. We did have, in addition to the Willoughby Eastlake meeting, we did have a meeting in Willowick at the public library where Treasurer Zern had the meeting, and both John Marr and I had a chance to speak to the people. And I can tell you that people in that audience, there was about 75 to 100 people in the audience, they were really upset. I mean, really upset about, they said they've had enough of these property taxes. They no longer just want to be renters from the government. And we're pushing freedom and liberty for this generation and future generations.
I got a question for you. So if you just move the money, it's not a property tax, but it's going to go to an earned income tax. I think that's just as bad, though. Don't we want the state? Isn't the objective here is for the state
100%.
to fund the schools?
Yes,
through their sales tax or whatever.
Article 6, Section 2, as Commissioner Pletcher keeps referring to it, that clearly defines that it is the responsibility of the state to fund all of the schools.
Absolutely. Let me get George. George, you're with us, right? Are you still out there, George? Or did you leave? George.
Well, I wouldn't leave. What do you think? Or at least I wouldn't leave without saying goodbye.
Gotcha. Good. Hey, you're a CPA, and what's your thoughts on all this? So it seems like the schools are just going to say, "Oh, okay, well, let's not do the property tax thing. Hey, let's just raise the earned income tax."
Well, first of all, you have to remember the public school system is not there to educate our students because the basic education that you're getting through 12 grades, you could probably get in 8. And the rest of the time, it's really there for brainwashing. So the less money we give to them, the better. So even $10,000 per student is too much. And look at some of the numbers we have now, 20,000, 25, 30. And the number across the board in the state of Ohio, let's just use 30% of the students can read and compute at grade level. So we need to cut expenses, and we need to hire qualified teachers who can teach reading, writing, arithmetic, not LGBTQ propaganda, hating our country, lack of civics, nothing about our Constitution. It's absurd, insane, and insanity, as we all know the definition, is doing the same thing over and over and over again and getting the same results. Our education system sucks. We used to be not in the top 5 I'm not much for these global standards, top 5 in the world. Now we're 38th out of 40 countries. Everybody's eating our lunch. Everybody knows how to use their cell phone and do video games and try to become billionaires in the coffee house doing, Bitcoin. But education, engineering, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and obviously the trades, you don't need 12 years of education, quote, education, to become a carpenter, a plumber, a welder. And we have clients who have eschewed this whole higher education stuff, and they're 25 years old and they're making over $100,000 as a carpenter. Or they're welders. I have a client who's a welder. He's making, of course, I think he's a deep sea welder, but he's making $350,000 a year because he's making stuff and doing stuff. We don't need, this nonsense about, you can't go further if you don't have a high school diploma. They should be able to issue a high school diploma in nine grades, not 12.
Yeah, I agree. I think college should be shortened too. I mean, I think a degree, a bachelor's degree, should be 2 years, 3 years, 2 maybe, 2.5 years. That's it. Done. Get out in the real world, and instead of sitting at a desk and doing nothing and reading, and these kids graduate. Too many of them graduate today, and they're not qualified to do anything.
Right, and they go on for further education, and they're out in 2 years, and they have $60,000 in debt, and they become a barista at Starbucks. So the whole system is upside down. It's insanity. From the frauds that we talked about early to what's going on with our education system. We need to get whipped into shape. It's absurd.
Absolutely absurd. All right, let's go around the horn one last time here, John. Go ahead. Any other thoughts on the meeting or in that? I know it was a good meeting, and to me it was frightening. It was frightening because the school system again they're clamoring that they don't have any money. Got to do this for the kids. Oh, we've the one lady, I can't sleep at night. I was going back and forth, but 2.5% was too high. But I'll tell you what, let's just go 1.5%. And I'm like, this sounds like it was planned from the very beginning, just to go 1.5.
Well, it was. I mean, it was blatant that they had it all planned because, again, remember, they're not allowed to talk to each other. Everything they discuss is supposed to be right there in the open at the meeting. But they say that right at the beginning. But, Nancy brought up a lot of points, though. She brought up a point that, that over 80% of the district's operating, actually 84% are tied to payroll, benefits, and people-driven expenses, not books. And then the classrooms only get half of that. The rest is administration, support staffing, consultant systems, layerings of overhead that grow automatically regardless of enrollment, performance, or affordability. And then there's the fringe benefits. That's huge. The fringe benefits are pretty much 50% of the payroll. And, and again, that's where the biggest costs are with Willoughby Lake School, just round numbers, their payroll is 50 million and benefits are 25 million. So they're at that 75, almost 80 million right there. So, that's where it's at. And then again, pensions, health insurance, retirement packages for administrators, non-classroom staff, that's on a very rise. They have multiple teachers per classroom, and then they're guaranteed, protected, untouchable. And who pays for them? Us, the homeowners, and the family. And then again, they're giving gold-plated pension obligations. Okay, that we'll never see any of those. And then they're the bonds. Basically, every bond that the district issues is secured by our homes. Our property is used as collateral, not performance, not from the outcomes. And then when the costs rise, the system doesn't adjust. We do, the taxpayers. And then it's called funding. They call it funding education, but the first dollars don't go to the kids. They go to pensions, benefits, debt service, and the bureaucracy. And that's what crowding out looks like. And that was the word, crowding out that she wanted to bring in there, is because that's what they're doing. They're crowding out with administrative costs and all this bureaucracy they have, basically crowding out. And then the kids are suffering because the proficiencies keep going down and down and down. And that's the reality of it. So you want to close on that, I guess?
No, that is good. I'm going to let John have a word here. Go ahead, John. But I think the CUP report said only like 80. I think in Cleveland Heights, I looked at the CUP report, and it was at 84% goes for salaries. 84%.
Correct.
Listen, we all acknowledge that the fundamental relationship in a school is between teachers and students. Everything else is just to facilitate that relationship and should be, I won't even say secondary. It should be third, fourth, fifth, sixth. It should be far down the road from it. And yet we see this ballooning administration and overhead that has made education completely unaffordable. At the same time, it's made education worse. You put all those administrators between the teacher and their student, I don't need to tell you, education suffers, and that's borne out in lower and lower proficiency scores. But in terms of how this meeting happened in Willoughby East Lake, I think it's a microcosm of what's wrong with tax levies and the system that's being used to fund schools locally, which violates the state constitution, as we've discussed before. There's a whole total intentional lack of transparency. I mean, you don't see the school board members openly discussing this issue and saying, let's talk about raising taxes. Let's talk about a new 1.5% income tax. They're not saying this is a good thing. Let's vote for it. They're not talking about it at all, because the truth is no one wants you to know. They want to sneak it through on the May ballot. They want as few people to turn out as possible. And that way, only the loyalists who've been briefed on the issue, people who are going to be paid out of the new taxes, are going to show up to vote. And everyone else is going to get blindsided. If this was such a good idea, if they were proud of what they were doing, they'd put it on the November ballot, let everyone vote, and they'd take the rest of the year to explain what a phenomenal idea they have. Of course they know that raising the earned income tax by 1.5% is going to destroy this community. They understand that over the long term, people are going to leave, and that's going to leave a heavier and heavier burden on those who remain, on low-income, middle-class people who are going to be taxed to bejesus and back. They understand that. But let's be real here. The superintendent, the treasurer, they'll have moved on to some other district 5 years from now, and the disaster that comes next is not going to be their problem. These folks don't care about the long term. They go for their next promotion, their next job, and they leave us behind in their wake. But there's a total lack of transparency. And frankly, I want to take it another step. There is a contempt for the taxpayer. I heard those school board members speaking out of both sides of their mouth. On the one hand, they said over and over again, we want feedback, we want community engagement. But in response to the feedback they got, which wasn't just no, it was hell no. There was a very powerful, immediate response from the few members of the public that did find out. And it was universal. Everyone said, no, this is a terrible idea, whether we're talking about the mayors, the taxpayers. We all came out and said the same thing. No, their response was, oh, you're threatening us. You're intimidating us. No. We're giving you feedback. We're giving our employee. We're your bosses, the voters. We're giving our employee feedback. We're saying, no, you obviously misheard us. We do not want to pay more taxes. And we certainly don't want to pay such a high tax rate that it taxes people out of the district.
Yeah, this is the problem I have with everything. It's like we shouldn't be begging them. We shouldn't be wheeling and dealing with them. We should be the ones making the demands. And there's not going to be an increase in tax. So, stuff it and that's it. Done. I wanted to, and if you guys know who these school people are, I was going to write it down, but it doesn't do any good to say the school board. These are individuals that people need to know who's on that school board, and people need to say, we don't like what you're doing, and they need to confront these individuals because they're individuals. They need to be confronted. And the more that they are off into, just a vague name like school board, they feel comfort in that,
Yeah, Joe, there's a problem. I hear what you're saying, Joe, but I want to speak on behalf of Commissioner Plechnik there. He was speaking up, not at that school board meeting, but prior to the meeting, he was discussing the pros and cons of what they were planning to do, and he was accused by the board members, specifically the board president, of intimidation tactics. So now, when Stacy Menser mentions about intimidation tactics, now that now you've got other people that are on the side of Stacy Menser now coming down on John Plechnik for intimidation tactics, and all he's really doing is trying to point out the problems with their decisions. So I agree with you, but there's ramifications on that. They're now going to come back to us that are saying, you can't do this to the community. We're now intimidating them.
All right, can I do this? Can I do this a second? Yeah, wait, one second. Instead of, I don't want to put John Plechnik on the hot seat. I don't want to put Brian Massey. I don't want to put any of you guys on the hot seat. But if you tell me their names, I'll put myself on the hot seat because I really don't care. And I think that is the whole idea of this platform. That was the whole idea of getting the platform going, was to try to make a difference in the communities and not just to complain. That's like fingernails on a chalkboard. I hate complainers. It's like, okay, these people, Stacy, can you give me their names or I'll have to look it up?
Well, the board president is Stacy Menser.
Stacy Mentor?
Menser, M-E-N-S-E-R.
Menser, Stacy Menser. All right. Who's the other one?
There's four others. I
can't remember.
I can't remember all their names. We can get them for you, though, Joe.
We'll get it. We'll talk about it at the next show. But we will talk about them, and that's the whole idea of having a platform. I'm sick and tired of this one-sided. They work for us, okay? And if we're afraid and intimidated, that's not gonna go anywhere. What's that, George?
No, I said I just emailed it to you.
That was John. That wasn't me.
That was John Mara.
Oh, John Mara.
Yeah, I emailed you the link for the school board members. You can put the link there.
Okay.
Joe, I can off air. I can help you with that. I've got most all of them. So I want to recognize. I'm reading from Rumble here. Jansky, great question. And Kent, if you're there, if you could pop Jansky's question, his or her comment about going in and getting in front of school boards. You're right. You're absolutely right. And in the context of John Plechnik or Brian Massey or anybody else asking questions, and then the name calling kicks in. There's an answer. I'm going to start with the numbers because numbers don't lie. And when you put these up on a placard, you put them on a foam core and bring a little tripod in. I've got a little cheapie. It cost me like $10. I can carry this thing in and put a giant cardboard sign up at the school board meetings that show the actual numbers. And those don't lie. Those refute all of this intimidation tactic nonsense. Here's where we are. Here's the numbers. What's become a focus in this conversation is simply Lake County. Wherever you are in Ohio, the same or similar types of numbers apply. Wycliffe Schools came up. Wycliffe Schools has 1,201 students. They're spending $24,067 per student, and that's not all of it. There's more money on top of that. They're reporting a 55.5% proficiency rate. A little better than half of the students can know how to stinking read when they're done with 12 years of spending around $24,000 per student. It's ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. Willoughby Eastlake is spending $18,583. They're reporting 60.4% proficiency. Remember, of course, not only is that not the full number, because there's more that's spent on top of that, but also keep in mind that these proficiency scores are actually weakened. They're softened proficiency scores. Well, I took it one step further because we're using Lake County as kind of a guinea pig. They're a test subject for this conversation today. And I tallied up all of the different budgets from these schools. Two of them are over $100 million a year. We got one at 123, one at 122. I tallied up, and we're north of $505 million per year. $505 million for Lake County. That's one of 88 counties in the state of Ohio, and it's one that's really not all that densely populated. So that's ludicrous. That's absolutely unacceptable. And so what you can do, and what I encourage for anybody that wants to go to in front of the school board, Commissioner Plechnik, Brian Massey, or anybody else, start with the numbers. Don't go in, I suggest, don't go in just simply irate. Go in with the facts and calmly assert them. I show people in the Academic Accountability Project how to even turn it into a really pretty chart. It's a pretty chart with ugly lines on it that shows dropping enrollment with increasing administrative staff and costs and massively increasing expenses. When you get to a school district spending $25,000 a year, and they're publicly report there, it's right out there in broad daylight, 50% proficiency in one of the weakest states in the union for academic proficiency standards. That's awful.
All right, here we have the world famous Willoughby Eastlake Board of Education members. All right, so that's Stacy Menser, the president, on the left. Jamie Schatzman, who's the VP. And who else we got here? You got Rhonda Osagi. Denise Verdi's on there. But Denise has got to be a good one. Denise has to be a good one.
From what I know, yeah.
Gabriel Miller is on there. and there's emails, and these guys, they're all women too, huh? I guess I shouldn't say guys, I should say women. To me, this is who you have to voice your opposition. So anybody listening or watching, these are the people you need to send emails to, make phone calls to, and let them know that you're not going to have a tax increase, okay? You are not going to play their game. No more tax increases, period. And it's ridiculous. The whole school board thing is ridiculous because you got a couple of people making decisions for the entire city, and they're all on there because the teachers union funded them to get them on there.
I'm glad you said that. If you didn't, I was just about to.
Yeah, they funded it to get them on there so to pass levies. That's basically what they do. That's how it works.
Massive conflict of interest.
All right. This whole thing has gone nuts. So, okay. Last but not least, I'll let George end it. George, you want to just end it with us with some words of wisdom?
Yeah, just momentarily on the school board. Speaking of intimidation, they're intimidating a county commissioner who represents the whole county, who's a tax professor and an attorney, who's a pretty smart guy all around. And their intimidation tactics when the levies come up, like you said, the teachers unions fund it. They get, they delay, they obfuscate. Their propaganda machine would make Dr. Goebbels of the Nazi Third Reich blush with embarrassment. So they're saying a sitting county commissioner who's exercising his First Amendment rights as a citizen, a taxpayer, and a commissioner is the one intimidating them. So I say to hell with them. They need to be taken to task for their intimidation tactics, their propaganda tactics, and their overall insanity. But that's not what I want to end it on. I want to end it on a happy and positive note. I know you find that hard to believe, Joe. But,
all right. Yep. Hit us with it.
What I'm going to say is, if you look at the statistics that just came out, we have the lowest trade deficit since 2009, thanks to Trump's tariffs. Tariffs. Say that fast 3 times. So, and the other statistics that I've been waiting for and hoping for that it would be a big number is the number of overdose deaths, mostly from fentanyl, from 2025 to 2024, and the overall drop in death from overdoses has declined by about 3,000 per month, almost 40,000 on an annual basis. The number, and so we could try to thank President Trump for sinking these drug ships, killing these people who have been murdering our children to the tune of 100,000 per year for the past 20 years or so, 15 years, and those have dropped in half to about 3,000 per month as opposed to 6,000 per month. So we've cut down by about 40,000, or rather President Trump has, with his aggressive stance against the narco-terrorists.
That is awesome. All right. Good news. Good news. All right. Everybody take care. Have a good night. And God bless you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, all.
Where the children at? Tell me, Mr. Governor, who's accountable for that?